was developed by Rare and published by Microsoft Game Studios. The game was released in North America in October of 2003, Europe in November of 2003, and Japan in April of 2004. Later in 2015, the game would be bundled in with 30 other Rare games. That is, Rare the company and not Rare the value. In Rare Replay, a compilation title for the Xbox One. Hello everyone, my name is Gary, I like games, and welcome to Game Probe, the show where we do a deep dive on the weird, the forgotten, and the indie side of gaming. We do this by examining a game's strengths, weaknesses, and neutral qualities to determine whether or not it's worth really revisiting nowadays. Today we are looking at Grabbed by the Ghoulies, Rare's debut title on the Xbox after being acquired by Microsoft and joining the Xbox family. When Grabbed by the Ghoulies released, it did not come out swinging. It got average reviews at best, but unfortunately it did leave a lot of fans disappointed. I mean, this is Rare we're talking about, the company behind Banjo-Kazooie, Perfect Dark, and Conker's Bad Fur Day. That reputation, coupled with the attention and likely disdain from fans for being bought by Microsoft, it goes without saying that expectations were really high, and that all eyes were on Rare to show off what it meant to have Microsoft backing you. And this was Microsoft's first foray into the console market, so they really needed a couple bangers to really show why you should own an Xbox. Grabbed by the Ghoulies is a 3D action beat-em-up style game with a Hanna-Barbera inspired aesthetic. In the game, we control Cooper, who with his girlfriend Amber take shelter from a storm in Gloomhaven Hall, a mansion owned by Baron Von Ghoul. After Cooper upsets Baron Von Ghoul for calling him a creep, Von Ghoul kidnaps Amber to get back at Cooper. It is now up to Cooper to brave the rooms of this haunted mansion in order to save his girlfriend and any other unfortunate souls that have been taken by the evil Baron. With that brief history out of the way, let's get into the review. Spoilers from here on out. Grabbed by the Ghoulies is split up between 5 chapters and lots of scenes, which act as sort of levels in each chapter. Chapter 1 functions as a tutorial, while chapters 2 and 3 make up the bulk of this game, each having a specific objective we are trying to accomplish. Chapter 4 is 1 scene long and just a boss fight, while Chapter 5 has us racing against the clock to save the other kids trapped inside the mansion and escape before the time runs out. I really like this setup, and while the pacing is a little awkward, as I felt like Chapters 2 and 3 drag on a little too long, while Chapters 4 and 5 just fly by, it was still a nice way to break up the game. Also, I really like the main character in this game. Cooper is just some guy. I feel like a lot of games really try to go out of their way to make the player or the character the player is playing feel special. And while that is fine, it is kind of refreshing that Cooper is just some kid. It's never revealed that Cooper comes from a long line of undead hunters, or that it is his destiny to free the denizens of Gloomhaven Hall. He is just some kid who's stumbled into this mess and has to do what he can to save his girlfriend. That gives him a real underdog charm in my opinion, and helps make him feel grounded as a character. Now that being said, we don't really know anything about Cooper, except that Amber is definitely the one in charge in that relationship. While we're on the subject of Gloomhaven Hall's denizens, let's talk about them. First, there are the Ghoulies, who are just fantastic. There are so many, and they are steadily introduced throughout the game. There's typical spooky game enemies like skeletons, various types of imps, zombies, and vampires, as well as some more ridiculous enemies like vampire chickens, haunted coats, and haunted televisions. Those enemies and so many more all have unique ways to try to put the hurt on Cooper. For instance, zombies, being the brainless fools they are, will just swing their arm in Cooper's direction, hoping they hit. Or the Medusa, who acts like the mansion's centennials, and will put Cooper into a super scary shock if she catches him in her gaze. The super scary shock is a quick time event that happens throughout the game when Cooper gets scared. My favorite ghoulie is easily the skeleton though. These guys ooze personality and have such fun interactions. Pretty frequently, you'll see a skeleton get a light bulb above their head, and then run off to find something to use as a weapon. Every time that happens, it just puts a big smile on my face. It really helps make these enemies feel more alive than just, bits of code set to attack us. Cooper isn't alone in his fight with the Baron and his Ghoulies, though. Most of the human residents, and Mr. Ribs, aren't big fans of the Baron and help Cooper throughout his journey. Each character has their own personality, and while some lean a little heavy into stereotypes, the characters are fun nonetheless. My favorite is Fiddlesworth, who will start every encounter with a fiddlerism, which is just a weird little farming phrase he likes to say, like, mow my meadows, or pick my plums, or tickle my turkey. Those phrases, paired with that big goofy grin he has on his face, just made me lose it every time he was on screen. In fact, I love those fiddlerisms so much, I decided I wanted to try to come up with some and use them in real life. Fondle my feeder! Wario just passed me! Yeah? We are? Mary, my mare, we're having pizza tonight! Fiddlesworth and the others aren't just comic relief though. Usually when you see one of them, you can count on getting a weapon that will be used over the next few rooms that will either dispatch ghoulies with ease, or be required to take down a specific type of ghoulie. These weapons can only be used for so long before they need to cool down, and can be anything from a soda pop gun, to a garlic gun for dealing with vampires, to a holy water squirt gun that makes quick work of zombies. You won't be able to pick up other weapons while you have these more permanent types of weapons, but considering how strong these are, it isn't a problem. We'll talk about those other types of weapons in a bit. For now, let's just talk about how good this game looks. Because holy crap, let's get this out of the way now. This game still looks great for its time. Now, it still has a little bit of that Xbox chunkiness to it, and it definitely shows its age, but the models and environments in this game still look fantastic. Gloomhaven Hall is so well detailed for a game from this time, and a delight to explore, especially with all the destructible bits in each room. The game sounds great too. The music was done by none other than the legendary Grant Kirkhope, and he delivered in this game. Here, take a listen to a few samples from the soundtrack. This, of course, carries over to the sound effects too. Everything from the weapons smacking off your enemies to the characters talking sounds fantastic. The game uses the sound effect style and text style from Rare's previous titles like Banjo and Kazooie, and it is used to great effect here. The game certainly has that Rare charm. It's just got so much personality. Now let's talk about gameplay. I like a majority of the gameplay in Grabbed by the Ghoulies. Not all of it, but we'll get to that later. For now, what you need to know is, in nearly every room, Baron Von Ghoul will adjust Cooper's current health to what he sees fit. This is to help control the challenge in each room, as you won't be able to just keep stacking health because every room your health will change. On top of that, many of the rooms have rules that we must adhere to, like not taking damage, not defeating the same enemy type back to back, or defeating enemies in a certain amount of time, as well as many other rules. Break one of these rules, and you will summon the Reaper who can kill Cooper in one hit. But we will talk more about the Reaper in a bit. Yeah, I know I'm saying that a lot. These challenges and health adjustments help keep the gameplay feeling fresh, and make backtracking in the game, something I normally dislike, tolerable, as I was always curious what the next challenge was going to be when I returned to a repeated room. The mansion is designed excellently. It feels like it could be a real place instead of just a random assortment of rooms. Kudos to whoever designed it. Anyway, Cooper has a few combos that he can do with his Fists of Fury, but despite how satisfying the animations are for these attacks, they only deal 1 damage per hit until you knock the enemy down, at which point it's 10, and then 5 after that, I think. Instead, you'll want to make use of the various temporary weapons to dispatch the ghoulies. I told you we'd talk about these. These temporary weapons are fun and come in a variety of shapes and sizes. Some rooms you might throw a TV or a potted plant. Another, you might be chucking cheeseburgers at your enemies. Heck, in some you might swing a one-time use pool table around the room to clear out a mass of enemies. Most of the time though, you'll want the swinging weapons. They're reliable, they cover a wide range, and what did they do to one guard? While we're mourning the loss of our swordfish friend from another game, there are tons of Easter eggs from past Rare games scattered throughout the mansion. Look, there's a monster Banjo and Kazooie hanging as stuffed trophy heads, and a picture of Mumbo on the wall over there. The Rare logo is plastered on nearly everything throughout the game too, and honestly I adore this kind of thing. Yeah, it can come off as a bit self-indulgent, but in a game like this it's fun, and I like fun. There are so many Easter eggs that there is no way I could list them all, so let's just get back on track. Where were we? Oh right, the temporary weapons. Most of these weapons break after 3 or 6 successful hits on either an enemy or the environment. Speaking of which, The environment is destructible in some places, and you are usually rewarded for breaking the environment with more weapons or super soups, which can also be found throughout the levels. Super soups give Cooper temporary abilities like increased speed, invulnerability, unbreakable, or limitless weapon uses for a short amount of time. Hey everybody, this is Gary, and as I was editing this video, I realized I only talked about the positive super soups. There are also negative super soups. Throughout the game, you'll find these super soups like you see on screen here, the little black and orange ghost. Anytime you see that, that's a bad super soup. It's going to give you some kind of negative effect, like reversing your controls for a short while or slowing Cooper down for a short while. These are bad news. Not all the super soups are good. I just wanted to squeeze this in here because I do think it's important to talk about in the game that not all super soups are good. Thank you for letting me interrupt, and let's get back to the video. And so much more. These super soups are super cool. Yeah, I deserve the booing there. But honestly, these super soups are incredibly handy, and I love the variety of effects that they give. And I like how a lot of the times you might find a soup before you know what the objective in the room is, and so it's like, don't pick this up right away because you might need it later. The game has pretty standard controls that you'll find in any action game with one major exception. You use the second thumbstick to attack instead of a button. This is both a strength and a weakness of the gameplay. On one hand, it can be satisfying to really feel like you're swinging the weapon you're holding, and it gives you a larger range of motion. But on the other hand, it can feel clunky at times, and what would end up happening is I would want to swing in a very specific direction, and Cooper would swing towards that direction, but it would usually be off by a bit. And honestly, you can probably put a lot of that blame on the technical capabilities of the time, but it's still kind of frustrating, and if they would have just given us a button to use, I feel like it would have felt better, even if it still had the same problem. That being said, the game is on the easier side of things, so if you take a bit of time to get used to how the controls work, you shouldn't have too much of an issue. On the subject of the game's difficulty, this is not a difficult game aside from a small handful of rooms. Those rooms, however, skyrocket the difficulty scale there, and then it shoots right back down afterwards. It kind of messes with the pacing some. This definitely feels like a Kirby style game with its difficulty. The challenge comes not from its actual gameplay, but from grabbing all the collectibles, which come in the form of rare themed books in this game. More self-indulgence. These collectibles are pretty cleverly hidden and fun to find. On the main menu under the Extras tab, there's an option to revisit any room in the mansion once you've beaten them, meaning you won't have to replay the entire game if you miss a book, which is one of those quality of life things that I adore. Every 5 collectibles unlocks a new challenge that can be done separate from the story, with there being a grand total of 100 books, meaning there are 20 challenges total. These challenges are a ton of fun and add a bit more spice to the game, as well as help extend the game's playtime a little longer. Every challenge beaten unlocks game art, and if you collect all 100 books and then beat all 20 challenges, you unlock challenge 21, which tasks you to beat the game as Amber with only 10 health in every room and no super soups at all. Those of you who wanted something more difficult out of this game, there's your challenge for you. But personally, that sounds ridiculous and I'm not touching that. But if you do beat the challenge, you get the E3 trailer, I believe, and something else that I know I knew and I read, and now I can't think of what it is. Maybe I'll put it on screen. Overall though, I'd summarize the gameplay here as simple but satisfying. To give you a couple games to compare it to, think how like Assassin's Creed 2 plays, or like the Batman Arkham games play with their combat, but a very, very, very simplified version of that. No auto-locking onto enemies and stuff like that, but that's kind of what it made me think of. Before we wrap up the strengths, we have to talk about my favorite mechanic though, the Reaper. So you're Cooper, and you break a rule and summon the Reaper. What happens next? When the Reaper is summoned, it is summoned in whatever door you need to go through to progress. The background music stops. It is replaced with creepy white noise. The Reaper will follow Cooper, cannot be defeated in most rooms, and will knock out Cooper if he touches him with its outstretched hand, forcing you to restart the room. This means you'll need to avoid the Reaper while also finishing whatever rule is still in effect for the room, or at least make it to the door depending on what rule you broke and what rules left, that kind of thing. It isn't all bad news though. As it turns out, the Reaper can be used to our advantage. See, the Reaper will defeat anything it touches with its hand. This includes enemies, meaning you can maneuver the Reaper around and have it do some of your dirty work for you. I love how this mechanic is simultaneously forgiving because the game just doesn't give you a game over for breaking its rules, and it's punishing because it adds this new obstacle for the player to overcome. It's a, here, you can have a second chance, but with a twist. That finishes out the strengths though, so let's move into the neutral qualities. So if you're new here, this section of the review is stuff that I don't feel really benefits or harms the game and or is tough to categorize as a strength or a weakness. This is kind of my catch-all section for anything that doesn't really fit. For this game, I only have one thing that really fits this category, and that is the game's length. The game runs for about 5 to 6 hours in the story mode, depending on how many books you want to collect. All of the challenges probably add another hour or two at best to the playtime, so this isn't an incredibly long game, but it isn't terribly short either. On screen, you can see the playtime I had right after beating the game. Keep in mind, I did have frequent pauses of easily a minute or more, because fatherhood, which I would say skewed that number a bit, but I bet I landed pretty close on an average playtime. With that out of the way, this is a really short section. Let's move on to Grabbed by the Ghoulies weaknesses. So we already mentioned the weaknesses in the game's combat back in the strength section, which I know is kind of weird, but it does bear repeating here. The game's combat is clunky and takes a bit of getting used to. Even after that, combat never really felt good to control, but at least it was passable and wasn't unpleasant. That being said, I do feel like this could be a major turnoff for some, so it's definitely a weakness. I don't like Baron von Ghoul. Now don't get me wrong, the guy clearly has style, but this dick dastardly wannabe taunts us throughout the entire game, constantly setting rules and messing with our health. By the time we make it to him, we're ready to put the beat down on him. And all I found was disappointment. First of all, the twist involving him and Crivens was kind of unnecessary, but I could have overlooked that if his boss fight wasn't such a drag. In the boss fight against the Baron, he will smugly strut around the room, doing a simple swipe with his staff if you get close. That's his only attack. His strut does leave him open for you to hit him in the back, which is the safest place to attack him from. After a couple hits, you will stun him, at which point you can knock him over, grab his staff, which is the only weapon capable of hurting him for reasons, and begin to wail on him. That is if you can catch him. If you're quick, you won't have to worry about it, and should be able to attack him before he gets too far away. At least that is what it said in the various guides I read, but I could never seem to get the timing down, and always had to chase him around his bedroom while he was flashing red. If you swing at him while he is red, your attack fails to do any damage, and you lose one use of the staff. Also, look at this health. He's got 200 health. That is ridiculous. Anyway, after you knock off some of his health, phase 2 begins, where Baron von Ghoul gets into a little body-sized airplane called the Red Baron. In this phase, the Baron will summon different Ghoulies and follow you around on his plane. You must defeat the Ghoulies before you can attack the Baron again, but you're given the soda pop gun during this phase, which makes short work of everyone. The Baron will try to dive bomb you, and if you get too close to him, the propeller might hit you, but he is essentially harmless during this phase of the fight, as he is incredibly easy to dodge here, and is easy to finish off. After that, he flies out the window and we move into Chapter 5. I think my biggest issue with the Baron is he feels so pathetic, and like, that's hilarious, I get it. I feel like the Baron is supposed to be the guy who we are led to believe is in charge, before halfway through the game, someone is revealed to be his superior, and that just never happens. Also, what the heck was the deal with Dr. Crackpot? Why wasn't he made into a boss? The guy turns Amber into a monster that we have to fight and then cure, only to be stopped without any form of boss fight. Talk about lame. Finally, we need to talk about the ending of this game. So we make our way to Chapter 5, freeing all the other kids trapped by that wacky Baron, and make it outside to the gates when this happens. Oh. Yes, for the last level of the game, we play as Marsupial the chef. I like Marsupial. She is a fun character, and playing as her is pretty cool. That being said, why was this what we went out on? We just used her giant spoon to beat back dozens of imps, keep in mind the first enemy we fought in the game, who think Cooper is lunch. Now look, it is satisfying to take out these hordes of imps, but this feels like it should have been somewhere in the middle of the game, not at the tail end. I don't know, but to me this was a strange way to end the game. So that does wrap up the weaknesses and the review. So is Grabbed by the Ghoulies worth revisiting? I can confidently say that Grabbed by the Ghoulies is absolutely worth revisiting. It's chock full of fun characters, animations, interactions, and it's just filled with that rare charm that we've all come to know and love. The game's combat is awkward and clunky, and in a game like this, combat is key. Grabbed by the Ghoulies is also very linear, and while I don't believe that linearity in games is bad, when your expectations are the openness of something like Banjo-Kazooie, Donkey Kong 64, or I don't know what I'm doing with my hands, Conker's Bad Fur Day, and then you go to Grabbed by the Ghoulies, which is not very open and is very much on rails, I could see being disappointed with that. I picked up the original Xbox version of Grabbed by the Ghoulies for like $9, but if you just want to experience this game, you're going to be much better off buying Rare Replay. It's got better visuals, it's like probably like $20 now, maybe, something like that. If I remember, I'll put somewhere on screen what it's going for on average, at the time of recording this, of course. And you get 30 more games on it. So Rare Replay is definitely the way you want to go. As I was playing through Grabbed by the Ghoulies and writing the review, I found myself stuck on one thought. And that's that Grabbed by the Ghoulies really deserves a sequel. The foundation is here, and a sequel could fix a lot of the problems that were present in the first game. The game is sort of treated like a cult classic nowadays, and as much as it pains the physical, loving, box-holding, manual-smelling part of me, Grabbed by the Ghoulies would be a great digital-only... Grabbed by the Ghoulies 2 would be a great digital-only sequel on Game Pass. Microsoft is really pushing the Game Pass service right now, and what better way to bring more fans in than to start picking out niche titles to bring back. They did it with Battletoads, and I enjoyed the new Battletoads game. I don't know if everybody did, but I definitely enjoyed it. But anyway, I'm getting off topic. The thought that I had, Grabbed by the Ghoulies needs a sequel. In a future video, it may not be the next video or the video after that, because I have other types of videos I want to try before I move back to this. I want to do a video where I conceptualize what a Grabbed by the Ghoulies 2 would look like. Tell me in the comments down below what you'd like to see out of a Grabbed by the Ghoulies sequel. So that's the end of the video. If you want to follow me elsewhere, my socials will be on screen around here somewhere. Who knows where I'm going to put them. And while you're at it, why not subscribe to the channel, you know? I like doing these videos, even if I am part perfectionist and part like sadist, because I'm like, hey, long form videos, they're like 30 minutes and I want to edit every little detail of them is a great idea. But, you know, you would really boost my ego a bit if you'd subscribe, and that would just make my day. Anyway, I hope you all have a great day, and thank you so much for watching.